So y'all know Portugal, right? They speak Brazilian and they have a bit of a knack for exploring and trading with the places they stumbled across. For the purposes of this video, that's all you really need to know about them. So a while back, they find a cool island that turned out to be part of a little-known place called Japan, after a boat got blown off course. Never wants to let an opportunity go to waste, they decided to set up a little trading post because money. This had two effects. One, you know those Japanese daimyos, which were essentially mini-kingdoms whose lords were loyal to the shogun and emperor? Well, they now have guns. And two, Christianity is in Japan now. These new Christians initially weren't really a problem, kinda just vibing by themselves and doing Christian things. But they did succeed in gaining significant ground, especially in the south, even straight up converting entire daimyos, which was definitely something. 4 of these new converts even took a trip to Rome to meet the Pope, so there's serious weight behind the rapid spread of the religion. However, these newly Christian daimyos were being very aggressively Christian, which spooked the guys in charge slightly. So they did some persecuting, including the shogun at the time having 20 Christians and 6 missionaries executed by crucifixion near Nagasaki. But it wasn't fully enforced because Japanese politics at the time were fucking wild. So it continued to spread across the islands over successive decades until the Tokugawa shogunate decided that this was going to be quite the problem actually, and straight up banned its practice in the country in 1612. Kicking out all of the missionaries, forbidding its propagation, ordering churches closed or destroyed, and putting all of its adherents on the clock to renounce their faith or be prepared to have a very bad time. So to review, we have a recently arrived minority group that fell out of favor with the local government due to its inherent foreignness and general risk of causing problems, and as a result their existence is being stamped out. Overall, the conditions are perfect for an uprising of some sort, and an uprising there would be. Bet you didn't know that the Satsuma Rebellion had an older brother, eh? Now all it would need is a catalyst, and as it turned out that catalyst happened to be theft. I mean taxes. Sorry, slip of the tongue. Moving on. The daimyo of the area of Shimabara was this guy called Matsukura Katsui, and he was an asshole. Apart from being generally a dick to the large Christian population of his domain, he also jacked taxes to pay for a big castle. So, if you ask me, he was asking for it. Similar shit was also happening on the near Amakusa Island, so overall it was a perfect storm. So near the end of 1637, a whole lot of disgruntled peasants revolted, led by a guy named Amakusa Shiro after cheekily assassinating a taxman. This spread with alarming speed, and as it progressed became a very Christian rebellion. Don't ask exactly what that means, although I wouldn't be surprised if the phrase Deus Vult started being thrown around. What made things worse was a fair few Ronin decided to join in on the fun because they were bored, I guess, which lent significant credence to this peasant rebellion. Now the shogunate was watching this with a great deal of concern, since it's implied that there was a metric fuckton of peasants that rose up, some estimates nearing 40,000, so they began mobilizing an even bigger army, mostly from the areas around Shimabara to go crush them sooner rather than later. They also got some help from a sneaky little group of people who represented a certain Dutch East India Company. Money is a powerful lure, but potentially fucking over Portugal is even better, and screwing Catholics as a Protestant country was just icing on the cake. As a result, they sent a few ships to help crush the rebellion along with supplying guns and cannons as requested by the shogun. While this was going on, the rebels had been busy. They had laid siege to a couple of castles, but were driven back by a timely arrival of armies from nearby domains. They then went and directed their fury at Shimabara Castle itself, the one inhabited by Emperor Dipshit himself, but that also failed, unfortunately. After this, they collectively decided that defense is the best offense, so the bulk gathered at Hara Castle in Hizen and turtled up. The shogunate forces had finally all arrived around this time as well and began their siege of the castle. This is where those Dutch cannons and ships came in handy, allowing them to shell the ever-loving fuck out of the fort from land and sea. Granted, these are 17th century cannons, so they were kind of shit, but it was a statement more than anything else. More and more shogunate troops were arriving as time marched on, but that didn't mean the rebels were about to give up. This is a Japanese rebellion after all, and if they go down swinging. The biggest advantage they had was that this was a winter siege, so it was kinda cold, and cold is notoriously difficult to fight in. Shogunate forces took very heavy losses during the siege, and coupled with several very well executed sorties by the rebels that killed a large number of the attacking troops, it honestly looked for a moment they would have to retreat and recuperate, but unfortunately this is history, and underdog stories very rarely end well. So the defenders began to run out of everything, as one does in a siege, so they would mount a massive assault in an attempt to get the shogunate forces to fuck off. But this would be repulsed, and several people captured let slip that the fort was out of basically everything related to combat. With this knowledge in mind, the full attack was launched on the castle. Between April 12th and 15th of 1638, they managed to dislodge and smash the rebels from the castle, taking obscene casualties but getting the job done. This brought the Shimabara Rebellion to a close, and all that was left was a retribution, which, oh my god, did a lot of people die for this. Our good man Amakusa Shiro was beheaded, along with upwards of 37,000 of the rebels who were captured. Shiro's head was displayed in Nagasaki, and Hara Castle was razed and buried. All Christian practices and beliefs were banned fully, and this time it would be ruthlessly enforced. Remaining Christians across the island were forced to renounce, and those who didn't were either killed or went into hiding. The shogunate would scapegoat the Portuguese as the instigators of the uprising, and so they threw all of their traders out of the country. The Dutch would make away like bandits, as now they were the only ones allowed to trade in Japan because they helped the shogunate. Ultimately, this would be one of the driving forces behind the closure of Japan to outside influence during the Sakoku period that would begin in the following years. As for Matsukura Katsui, everyone soon found out that he was an ass and was the reason the rebellion happened, and as a result he was also beheaded in Edo. Good riddance. The local area was also devastated and was massively depopulated, since all of the peasants were missing a pretty important body part at this point, so a shitload of immigrants were sent in from other places in Japan, all of which were definitely not Christian as to prevent bullshit like this from ever happening again. Shimabara would be the last major uprising and conflict in Japan until the Satsuma Rebellion in the 1860s. It didn't last very long and it was relatively localized, but it would end up having massive effects on the future of the country and even history itself to an extent. A total banning of Christianity would ensure that it never took root, and in general made the whole country a little skeptical about it because, they fucking revolted and all. It also definitely affected the next 200 years of isolation and influenced policy and events past that even into modern times. Most interesting thing about this outcome is that Christianity was spreading very quickly up to this point, so there is a timeline somewhere with a Christian Japan and all the implications that comes with. That would be one hell of a world, eh? Imagine how the country and culture would look in a world like that. Certainly fun to think about. That about does it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.